Hi, and welcome back to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat, and this is another episode of Behind the Sessions. Today, I want to talk about what it's like for a lot of people who are feeling something in pregnancy or postpartum or post loss or fertility, even that something's not right, but they don't know what it is. Most people don't start searching on the internet for medical terms like a perinatal mood or anxiety disorder or postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety. I can say that now that these terms are becoming more known, that some people might be, but for the most part, when somebody is feeling something that makes them not feel like themselves, makes them not feel right, they're wondering what is going on. They're often doing a search for things that sound more raw, more vulnerable, and searching for reasons why they don't feel like themselves. People don't automatically know that they are depressed or anxious. They might be able to say, I feel depressed or I feel anxious, but it could be in the way that we casually throw around terms like that nowadays to talk about our mood versus our current state of being. Like if you have a clinical state of depression, it's more than just a day. It's more than just a part of the day. It's most days of the week for chunks of the day at least. Um, and for weeks at a time. And again, that's not to say that some people don't specifically look up postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, but it's more exploratory. Like, what is postpartum depression? What is postpartum anxiety? Not, going to the internet saying, I know that this is what I have and I'm trying to learn more about it on their own. Maybe they've learned something about it and they're going to learn more. But typically, people are searching for some reason, some explanation as to why they feel the way they feel. And we've talked a lot on this podcast about how people don't necessarily feel like they are dealing with a condition. They generally feel like they are a bad person or a bad parent, or that they are, like I said before, not themselves. It's really quite internal. People will describe feeling off. People will describe that they don't feel like themselves after having a baby or not know why they were not happy or they are not happy after their baby is born. They could be searching for something like feeling off during postpartum or not bonding with my baby or something feels wrong or I feel weird after birth. And I think it's really important to distinguish how people might be describing how they feel, what they might be searching for online to try and gain understanding versus what we think they would say if they knew what was going on for them, because it's oftentimes missed. We might hear a friend say, like, oh, I'm crying all the time, or I feel kind of numb, or I feel a little bit empty. And if you don't know what you're looking at or looking for when somebody's describing how they feel, then it could very well go over your head that, oh, this is a clue into that something's not right for them, that they are not feeling well. And oftentimes, people who are going through it don't even know the extent to which they are suffering because, we're just taught to cope and try and figure it out. And, usually people are holding on with white knuckles, trying to get through difficult situations before they're even asking for help. So it's important for all of us to know what it could sound like when somebody is struggling and what it could look like when somebody is struggling. They might not be crying all the time. They might look or appear fine, but they might be saying that they're crying all the time. But it's really hard if you don't see it and they look and appear fine to you when you're talking to them. When they tell you that they're crying all the time, it might not sink in. It might not register that, oh, this is the signal that they're actually suffering. So you want to listen for things like, I'm crying all the time. I feel sad. I feel empty. I'm scared. I'm worried that I'm not a good mom. I'm worried that I don't know what I'm doing. I feel a little detached from my baby. It could also sound more like anxiety or worry, like I'm worried about my baby all the time. I feel like I can't relax. Having racing thoughts. I'm scared something bad will happen to my baby. I can't sleep when the baby sleeps. Hearing one of those kind of sentences in isolation might make you think, like, okay, well, I bet a lot of people feel that way, and I bet they're fine. And that's really oftentimes the response that people get who are suffering. I've heard so many times people say that, I told somebody how I was doing, and they told me, oh, well, all new moms feel that way, or all new parents go through that, or it's going to pass, you're going to be fine. And while people might be well meaning, when you're suffering from something, you finally get around to tell somebody that you're worrying about your baby, or you're worrying that something bad will happen. And the response you get is that, like, oh, it'll be fine. That tends to shut you down. It tends to make you not want to talk about it as much anymore, or at least not to that person. Some other things that you might hear is about exhaustion, being really overwhelmed, feeling angry, that somebody might describe feeling anger. They could describe feeling trapped. They could describe feeling like they're having a lot of thoughts pop into their head that are really upsetting or disturbing, or that they don't know how to make sense of them. You could hear things along the lines of, self doubt or self judgment, like other moms seem to be doing just fine, but I'm not. Or I'm a bad mom because I don't like this, or I'm not enjoying motherhood. It could sound like, oh, I'm supposed to feel grateful and I don't. So, like, what's wrong with me? And some people might even have feelings of regret and then shame about feelings of regret. People who are suffering so much and so deep in the trenches of their emotional suffering that they're having regrets about having a child. And we have to be really careful about how we respond to things like that. If you are somebody who is, going to visit a newly postpartum person and you're hearing any of this, anything that sounds remotely like this, I encourage you to really listen and to take it seriously. Be curious with them, and not just offer, thoughts and prayers, or not just offer, like, oh, yeah, it'll be fine. Or, oh, it might feel like you want to give them reassurance that everything is fine. And not that that is on its own bad or wrong. But if you are telling somebody that it's going to be fine before you've actually heard them out, before you've actually listened to what their experience is, then you're basically cutting them off from their feelings. You're cutting them off from wanting to talk to you anymore about it. So I encourage people to be really curious, like, oh gosh, that sounds tough. What is that like? You can say things like, oh, are there other things too that you're experiencing? You can ask them to describe it a little bit more, or like, even, oh, like, do you feel like that all the time, or is it just sometimes? And if you can't figure out how to be curious and ask curious types of questions, you can offer just support and just listen. You can even tell them, "Oh gosh, that sounds really hard. I don't know exactly how to support you, but I want to hear what it's like." You can say, "I wish I knew what to do to make it better, but I am here to support you and to listen." We don't have to know all of the answers for everything, and we can't. Oftentimes the person who's suffering doesn't know all of the answers. They don't even know all of what they're feeling, let alone know all of the answers. They certainly aren't going to know all of what to ask for. But I can tell you one thing, that when people feel heard, when somebody who is suffering at whatever level feels heard, is given space to feel their feelings, um, is given the respect to have somebody be curious about their feelings, mm, that in and of itself is relieving. That in and of itself is helpful. If you can hold some space for somebody to just be where they're at, it is relieving, it is soothing, it is calming, and it can give people a little bit of hope. People are often trying to make sense of how they feel, why they don't feel like themselves, why they feel worried or scared or sad or confused. And even just being able to verbalize it in a safe place with a safe person can help them have a deeper understanding of themselves. It can help them feel like, oh, there's one person in the world who can listen to me. It can help them feel like they're not alone. And that's just if you're just listening and validating, which apparently is hard for folks to do. We as somebody who's not in the moment and suffering might feel so uncomfortable and so like in our own heads about not knowing what to do to support the person who's suffering. And we just start spouting off all these things that we've heard before, like, oh yeah, all moms are sleep deprived, or yeah, that's really normal. Everybody cries, or, it's something that you're sort of like regurgitating that you heard from somewhere else that might not apply to the person you're talking to. If I'm the person who's not currently suffering and I say all of these things like, "Oh, yeah, well, all moms are like this," or "This is just something that happens," it would make me feel better maybe, but it doesn't make the person that I'm talking to feel better about their suffering. And it's just really easy to do that when you feel nervous or awkward and to, spout out these kinds of things that you've heard somebody else say. It is very worthwhile to just take a pause, take a breath, and say, "Gosh, that sounds hard." Though that's a validating way to respond to somebody. Even if you don't follow up with anything else or offer anything else, just basically reflecting back to somebody that you heard what they said and that you can sit there with them in it for even just a moment is helpful. And if you wanted to take it a step further, you can share your own experience if you've had one, after you've listened to their experience. As somebody who's listening to somebody else who is suffering, if you have something to share that doesn't override what their experience is, but rather kind of joins them, like, oh, I experienced postpartum depression also, or I think I had postpartum anxiety also. It's nice to offer something like that if you have experienced something that's similar. It You have to be a little bit careful here though to not override and start over identifying your experience with somebody else's by saying things like, "Oh, I felt exactly the same way. I know exactly how you feel." You don't. That's just you don't. There might be some similarities, but your experience was probably different than theirs. Even if there were some similarities, if you start over identifying with it, it's kind of another way of negating somebody else's experience. Not intentionally, but it can be. So if you have something to offer that's like genuine and it's meeting them where they're at, where you can offer a little bit of your experience without taking over, then that's a lovely thing to offer. If you don't have something directly connected to what they're talking about, you don't have to necessarily find some way to join them. You could say, "Oh, I heard that there are therapists that offer support for things like that." Or, "Hey, I know this great website that was really supportive to me or to a friend," or that you just heard about. You can offer resources again after you've spent some time listening and some time validating their feelings. The next steps could be that you have a resource. It could be postpartum.net, Postpartum Support International. It could be another organization that that helps. It could be the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline. It could be this podcast. It could be another podcast that you've heard that focuses on perinatal mental health and story sharing and or something where an expert is talking about perinatal mental health conditions. Usually, by the time somebody who is suffering, if they are telling you some bit of how they feel, they've been feeling it for a minute. And they've decided to share it with you because either they really need to share it with somebody, or they feel safe with you, or it's kind of a way to reach out, um, or they're feeling overwhelmed and lost and confused and need support and help. And unfortunately, I hear a lot when people come into therapy, a lot of the ways that the people who are coming into therapy, a lot of the ways that they've been misunderstood, that people try to talk them out of their feelings or their experience, that their feelings were minimized, that their experience was minimized. And this could be by professionals, but it could also be by family members. It could be by friends. It could be by, just an acquaintance or somebody off the street. That there's just so many ways that new moms and new parents experience is minimized that it makes it hard to talk about. It makes it hard to share with anybody. So turning to the internet for answers is makes a lot of sense. It's I think a natural step in the process of trying to figure out what's going on and, typing in those questions like, why am I always worried about my baby? How come I can't relax? I'm always exhausted. What is happening with me? I can't stop crying. What is this about? So, we talk a lot about, not going to Dr. Google for answers, but honestly, sometimes that's the place where people find the resources that they need because they can ask the questions and hopefully they get some type of supportive resource that comes through in their internet search. That would be ideal to get good and supportive resources. But there is nothing that beats human connection. And hearing something supportive from a friend or a family member or a provider, a medical provider, or somebody who's supporting you in your fertility, birth, pregnancy, postpartum, post loss journey, feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling understood if possible is so healing on its own. It doesn't fix everything, but it can help somebody get to the next part of their healing journey. So I hope this serves as a little bit of a PSA for people who are at the core really wanting to be supportive and helpful, but don't really know what to say, don't really know how to respond. Just just try and listen, say validating things. If you don't know how to say something that's validating, just let them know that you're there to listen, even if you're not quite sure how to help. And you can tell them that you'd love to help them find a resource for additional help, or if you know of a resource, to please give it to them. And those resources, as I mentioned before, a great one is Postpartum Support International. There are great books and resources through Karen Kleiman. There are great facilities for treatment like the Motherhood Center in New York. There are many all over the United States. And actually, you can find a list of those places for treatment on postpartum.net. And certainly pass along this podcast or other podcasts, any podcast that is talking about perinatal mental health does not need to be this one, but anything that you know that could support somebody where they can listen and hear themselves and see themselves in somebody else's experience or what a professional is talking about. That's why these resources exist, to be a lifeline, to be a place where people can go to feel heard and feel seen and feel understood. So, if you know of anybody who could benefit from hearing some of these ideas, please pass along this episode or share it on your own social or send it in an email, some way to get the word out that, yep, there are ways that we can support people that is informational, educational, and provides a potential lifeline. All right. Well, that'll be it for me for now. I will catch you on another episode of Behind the Sessions in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.